Hi, it's Bumble. Welcome back to my channel. So if I sound a bit too perky and loud, well, first thing, surprisingly, even though it's 9:30 and I'm getting the same amount of sleep as always, which is almost none, I'm actually pretty awake right now, and I kind of feel like it's because I was like so excited watching this movie. I've seen this before, back when I watched the original Terminator, like the first time I watched it, I'd watched the sequel and then I didn't watch any of the others, and currently that is still my state even after rewatching both of them. And I know I said I was probably just gonna skip all the way to Terminator Genesis, but I'm kind of getting a little more interested. I don't know, maybe it's because like I've already seen the first two and I at least sort of know the story, that now I'm like paying more attention and trying to like remember the lore, and I'm like kind of interested to see where it goes, especially like the evolution of the Terminators, how they like even when comparing like the first two movies get more advanced, and you know the technology at the time of like when the movies are made is like also kind of getting more advanced, where they can pull off like cooler and cooler stuff and CGI things and whatever, where I'm like kind of interested to see how it naturally goes. But I feel like there's probably a reason I haven't really heard anything about like the next two movies, at least. Like, I know for sure I don't want to watch Dark Fate, which is like the newest one, because I've heard that one's really, like, I've read the description, I've like heard that one specifically is like really bad. The third movie is about like John Connor as an adult, I think, or I don't know if he's an adult. It's just like him and his future wife, and they have to fight against like a female Terminator. A little curious about a female Terminator. The fourth one sounds like it's just like, you know, takes place in the future, and it's like them fighting the machines, and that kind of aspect of it I don't really care. I feel like with the series so far, from what I've experienced, I get really into the whole like Terminator versus Terminator, or like people versus Terminator, but like, you know, in the 80s and shit, where they're like, you know, they're in like the modern day, the Judgment Day hasn't happened yet, so they have to use all the like current weaponry and stuff, and it's more of like constantly trying to like outmaneuver and outsmart each other. I think the whole like chase of that really is what makes these movies really fun, which is probably why I only ever hear people talk about the first two. And man, this one's good. I enjoyed it just as much as the first time. Like, I forgot how good it was, or like I remembered enjoying it, but I like forget how good this one specifically is until I'm rewatching it again. And I know I say that a lot about a lot of movies, honestly, but yeah, like the first Terminator, you know, because I literally just saw it yesterday, which is, it's so nice when you can watch like a series like one every day, where it's still like just as fresh in your head. The first one was good, you know, it kind of almost reminds me of like Alien in a way. That's like the closest I can think to like compare right now, where it's like the first movie is like setting things up, you know, it's kind of more low stakes compared to like the sequels, or being introduced to the characters. You have main characters that are still sort of innocent in the sense of like they don't know the bullshit that they're gonna have to survive through in the sequels. And then by the second movie, the main characters like already, you know, like a badass has already encountered these whatever they're fighting before, so things are like more actiony and stuff. I mean, the first Alien movie is horror, then the second one, Aliens, is like the big 80s action movie. So with that one, it's like a complete genre change. Here it's like the first Terminator movie was already an action movie, but it was kind of more chill, and it didn't have like crazy futuristic technology or anything, where it's like the Terminator in that one didn't really feel like a robot or like a cyborg or anything. You could have just thought he's like a really strong dude. I mean, he survives all kinds of stuff in that one, you know, the Terminators always do, but it's just like two humans versus a Terminator, and we're like slowly learning about the lore. And then with this one, it's pretty cool, where like now you got a Terminator, they're fighting against a Terminator that's freaking made out of liquid metals, able to do all this cool shit. You know, they gotta protect John Connor. We're getting like more stuff about the lore, but it's like we already kind of know these characters and stuff. What's nice with this one, like with the first movie, it's cool having like Reese and Sarah as like the main characters, but like that one feels kind of slow, where it's like you slowly see like the Terminator is like trying to find her, and Reese is also trying to find Sarah. So it takes like 40 minutes before any of the like cool action stuff starts, you know. And I mean, that one's supposed to be kind of more, it's slow, it's almost a little suspenseful, it's like cool in its own way and stuff, but like Sarah's also just like in that one a normal person, you know, like doesn't really know how to like fight or anything. So it's really just more of like Reese versus the Terminator until like the end. And I mean, what ends up saving her is like the hydraulic press at the end. But no, she like quickly toughens up between movies. Actually, everyone in this movie, it's really nice. Like even the kid is like able to fight and defend themselves and stuff. Like, you know, sometimes with kid characters they can be like a liability, where it's like you gotta protect them and they can't defend themselves or anything, and they're also really small. But like John is like just as capable as the other characters. I mean, they still, you know, defend him and are like willing to die for him and stuff, but you know, he can take care of himself. Like even before all the Terminator stuff happens, he's already kind of a delinquent and is like hacking into banks and just kind of being a little turd, you know. I actually really liked him as a character. I thought that the child actor did a good job, where he's like kind of a little shit but not annoying or anything, but then he's still like really young and as a kid, and you know, doesn't want people to like get killed, you know, if it's like necessary to avoid and stuff. He's not as like, you know, like his mom at this point is like an action survivor who has like PTSD of like the whole stuff with the Terminator in the first movie. Like when she sees him again, where he's like the reprogrammed one this time, she like immediately freaks out. But other than that, she's already like doing anything she can to survive, but more so of like trying to protect John. And she keeps having these dreams about like Judgment Day and stuff, which I'm not really sure how she was already kind of dreaming about the future. She hasn't like lived through any of the stuff in the future, and like Judgment Day hasn't happened yet. It is actually pretty cool that we get to see it, where it's the scene of Sarah, she's dreaming that she's against a fence, and she sees all these kids in a playground, including like a younger version of her in the waitress outfit with her baby, you know, kind of almost representing like what if she could have a normal life and none of this Terminator stuff was gonna happen, even though that would mean she wouldn't have a kid, but whatever. And then everyone gets like blasted by the flames and turns into skeletons, and you see her even as a skeleton, and she's like screaming her head off. That's gotta be some scary shit, but it's still like a pretty well-known scene. I think it was like the only scene I knew about from the movie before I even had like watched it or anything. But yeah, she's like kind of a mess, but she's, you know, her main priority is like protecting John even over herself and stuff. And John's able to like handle himself, but he also like grows closer with his mom throughout the movie, because she starts out as like more focused on keeping him alive, but not really emotionally present for him, even when they do end up reuniting and stuff. But they end up, you know, growing closer as the movie goes on, so like that's pretty nice. But the really cool thing of the movie is, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger, he's playing a Terminator again, but it's like a reprogrammed one from the future. Oh yeah, some of the things I was wondering about from the first movie, you know, they get answered here. I originally thought that Sarah, I thought she was in jail, but it was actually like a mental institution. I was like wondering about like, how does she get there? She goes to Mexico, but it's that she ends up getting caught or something, and they put her in the mental institution because she keeps talking about like Terminators and stuff, where you almost think like, well, just don't talk about them and they'll like not put you in there. But you know, if you knew the world was ending and no one believed you, you'd like want to warn everyone too and stuff. I couldn't remember before I had watched this, because like when you get to see John in this movie, he's probably like 10 or 12 or something, and he has like foster parents and stuff, but he knows who like his actual mom and dad are. I'm surprised even that young he like knows a bit about his dad and like Sarah had like already told him, you know, everything about the Terminators and that he's gonna send his father into the past, and then he ends up being born and all this stuff, and he just, I mean, he thinks it's bullshit, but also just kind of knows these things, you know, and still sort of takes it seriously, which that's like a lot to ask a kid to believe and everything. But you know, it's the truth. What was I going to say with that? But it is nice that Sarah at least got to like raise John for a while. I don't think they say when she got put into the institution, but it's nice they got to like spend some time together, you know, enough for her to like teach him things and survival skills and stuff. Like you see him early on having this device where he's able to like hack into a like an ATM, and that ends up coming in handy later on when they break into this like computer facility or whatever. Oh yeah, the other thing I had been wondering about from the first movie was like the time machine is said to be destroyed, so it's only like Reese and the original Terminator that gets sent in. But then it sounds like they changed it for this one of like that, oh, just kidding, they sent two other Terminators or whatever, but then it's also said that like John specifically sent the Terminator in this one that ends up protecting his child self. So it's like a little confusing. I don't know if they're like backpedaling a little bit. I probably gotta like look on it on Wikipedia again or something, but whatever. I'll just accept it if it means we get more cool sequels. That's the thing with like time travel movies and stuff, where you can always find a way to just be like time travel shenanigans, whatever, or eventually it always feels like in time travel movies, like they always eventually reset the timeline anyway, so I guess it's like a try not to take it too seriously or grow emotionally attached. But yeah, it's cool to see Arnold play a Terminator again, and I really like his performance here as well. Like he already did a good job in the original, but like with that one it's like he's playing like a heartless machine that doesn't have like too much dialogue or anything, and then once he ends up losing his like sort of human skin, he doesn't have any more like dialogue, and it's not even really like him at that point. But here he's like a full-on character or anything. He's so cool. There's so many like cool things in this movie. Honestly, it's awesome. It makes me wish like, damn, this would have been a cool movie to see as like a kid in theaters or something when it first came out. I would have been all over this, honestly. But yeah, he plays a reprogrammed Terminator, and it makes me interested in like the Terminators going forward. I mentioned at the beginning of this of like how they evolve and stuff, because like in the first movie, you know, he can pass as a human and stuff, but he kind of just awkwardly talks to people. His voice is kind of like monotone. He doesn't really change facial expressions that much, or you know, feel anything or feel pain or whatever. But in this one, it's like even before he I mean, here he's supposed to be like a bit more of an advanced model, and then the Terminator that's trying to kill him, that's made out of like liquid metal that I'll talk about in a while, is like even more advanced than like him. So they pass more as like humans and stuff. But anyway, what is the name of the reprogrammed Terminator in this movie? I gotta stop calling him that. He's just labeled as Terminator on the cast thing. Cool, because the metal one's called the T-1000s. Okay, this one's the T-800. I never really remember like the numbers for any of these. It's gonna throw me out. Oh, sorry, I'm getting a Discord message. Hold on a sec. Okay, I might get more Discord messages and have to pause. My friend and I are talking about how Kirby's Return to Dreamland kind of kick-started off modern Kirby and being able to tell what elements future games borrowed from and stuff. So that might be a thing I have to keep pausing and writing about. Anyway, yeah, the T-800 is really cool. But yeah, even before he meets John. Okay, I need to like get my thoughts in order here. Like you see him, he goes to this bar, he doesn't it already feels like he's played differently than the one from the first movie. You know, where in the first one he meets those like teen punks and already is like beating the shit out of them and takes their clothes or whatever. But like with this one, it's like, I mean, he does still fight people and stuff, but I don't think he actually kills anyone in that bar scene. He just kind of injures them and stuff when he does at least like ask for the clothes first. But I'm thinking about, there's this guy with this shotgun when he tries to take the motorcycle, and he's like, I can't let you take that guy's bike or whatever. And then, you know, the T-800 I think shoots him. No, I think he just takes the gun and hits the guy or something, but he takes his sunglasses and he puts the sunglasses on, because like the sunglasses in the first movie were just like okay, his eye is revealed, he doesn't want people to know he's a cyborg, so he's got to like cover that up. But this one, he wears sunglasses for like 80% of the movie. The sunglasses are eventually destroyed and he just like never gets another pair. There's no reason for him to have the sunglasses other than to look cool and to complete the fit. But he takes them anyway and he wears them and stuff. So there's like little things like that where he kind of already almost has a personality, or is like doing things that don't really have anything to do with the mission, but he just takes them. Because like even without the sunglasses, he already looks like a human person and he's not running around naked anymore or anything. So I find that kind of interesting. And then his personality develops more. I actually really liked it towards the beginning of the movie. Like the first half of it, really, the T-800 here bonds with John. We're like almost becoming, I don't know if I could say like a father figure, even though Sarah refers to him as one at one point. I guess the closest to a father figure, or even just like a friend, because like this poor kid just needs like a friend, honestly, or like I guess like a father figure too. I mean, he has a friend. We saw his friend, who I'm actually surprised didn't rat him out to the police officer that wasn't actually a police officer, you know. But yeah, they end up becoming buddies. It actually is pretty funny and stuff. Like my parents were there. I think this is probably the last Terminator movie my parents are probably gonna watch with me, unless I can find some more somewhere. But no, my dad was laughing at a lot of the lines that the T-800 had in here, which was good. And I did too. I forgot that he's actually like kind of funny, where John is like teaching him all these phrases, and it's funny because you can tell he's supposed to be like a 90s California kid and stuff, with like the way he says things and whatever, which is pretty funny. And that's where you get a lot of the cool lines like "no problemo" and "hasta la vista, baby," which I was waiting the whole movie for the T-800 to say that, because I just could not remember what it was from, because it gets taught to him at the beginning. But no, apparently that line gets saved for when the metal guy, what did I say he was, the T-1000? Yeah, the T-1000, he gets hit with the nitrogen and freezes, and then, you know, you gotta say the cool line, and then that's where you get the "hasta la vista, baby." It isn't even the part that like kills him or anything either, but it's a cool moment, it's a cool line. But yeah, the T-800, he learns a lot of cool hip phrases and stuff, and how to do high fives. I was actually kind of surprised when John's trying to teach him how to do high fives. I was half expecting it, because it's like a gag and like other things or whatever, when like a really tough character is trying to give you like a high five and they hit like way too hard and like break your arm or something, especially because he's a robot. But like the fact that he like you hear John say ouch afterwards kind of quietly, but it's good he could like judge how much to hit. But I mean, he also has, his entire mission is like to protect John and everything. But it's kind of cool that like he has that mission and he like tries to stick to it at first, and then John figures out like, oh, this guy can do, I have this giant cool robot that can just do whatever I order it to do, huh? And then he has him go beat up the two guys that come over to investigate or whatever, and that whole scene was pretty funny. But I mean, if I was like 12 and I had like a cool robot that could do whatever I want, I'd probably get into some mischief too and get like way too excited about it. So like that's fair. But yeah, they end up bonding. I got emotionally attached to him as well. There's also some times where he'll, like he mentioned, like the T-800 even mentions in this, like, oh, the more time we spend around humans, the more we get like them. And I kept thinking about that for like the rest of the movie, where sometimes he eventually starts even like kind of giving a smirk sometimes, especially when John's like, wait, you can't kill these guys. And he's like, don't worry, I got this. And then he'll like shoot them in the kneecaps or whatever. It's probably crippling some of these people, but I guess as long as he doesn't kill them, which I find that kind of interesting, where he doesn't ever really learn the whole thing of like why you can't kill people. Sarah ends up learning that lesson instead, but he goes like the rest of the movie without really killing anyone except for the T-1000, but that's like the whole person he's supposed to be killing and everything. So then it makes it interesting. We have these big action scenes where you can think like, oh, he's totally gonna blast these guys, and then he has to find like other ways to like kind of get people out of the picture and stuff, which still ends up being really cool. But yeah, he's a cool character. And then I got sad when he ends up, cause he gets like the shit beaten out of him towards the end. Like for most of the movie, him and the T-1000, they're just going around shooting guns at each other and stuff and using like other weapons, but they finally get into like a fist fight, as I'll call it, at the end of the movie when the characters are in the like factory or whatever. And then you realize, okay, yeah, maybe it's not a good idea to get into like a physical fight with a guy that's literally made out of liquid metal, because like you can't really win that, and it's kind of almost sad watching the T-800 like get the snot kicked out of him and stuff, by like a tougher model, especially because he's like such a threat in the first movie, because you think like, whoa, he's a robot, he's really strong, he's like made out of metal and can repair himself, and it took like the entire movie for him to die, and it wasn't even from like the human characters or anything. And then here he gets beaten up pretty fast, but then again, like, what are you gonna do against molten metal or whatever? And then it's the two things with like the first two movies that I think are always cool is like during the final fight with whoever the villain is, the like protector characters, I'll call them, usually gets like knocked out or killed or something, or like horribly damaged, and then the person they're supposed to be protecting is the one that usually has to like do the killing blow, or at least try to survive for a little bit on their own. Like Sarah ends up having to run away from like the original T-800, and then he ends up getting killed by the hydraulic press. And then with this one, it's that Connor, or why am I saying Connor? No, John. They're both called Connor. John has to like try to get away and stuff, and then the T-800 shows up with the gun when Sarah's out of bullets, and which that part did bother me, because like Sarah runs out of bullets, and for a second the T-1000 is still like kind of in that pose of being shot or whatever, and is like right on the railing of being next to the lava. And I thought, girly, at this point you can literally just shove him in, unless he like would try to probably grab you and drag you down or whatever, but John's the only one that needs to survive this movie anyway. But she doesn't. She just tries to kind of get John away, and then the T-800 shows up and shoots the guy, and then he falls into the lava. And it's kind of interesting because I thought the Terminators weren't supposed to feel pain, and at least the T-800 doesn't in this movie, but then it's really weird watching when the T-1000 dies, because he, especially like compared to the T-800, actually, like I do find it interesting in both movies. The Terminator, that was the second point, the Terminators get killed by something that isn't the human characters, and is like a machine or something like nature, like the one in the first movie with the hydraulic press. It's like that's a machine, it's like made out of metal and stuff. He gets like crushed to death or whatever, and then in this one the metal guy gets put in the lava and then horribly melts and everything. I just find that fascinating. But the T-800 here, when he has to sacrifice himself, which is pretty sad, and he can't even obey John's order of like, yeah, I order you not to go in the lava and die willingly to save everybody. And then I like when he changes his hand to the thumbs up when he goes in the lava. And when I got to that point in the movie, my dad was saying that Arnold should have gotten like an Oscar or something for his performance here. I think so. I thought it was. I mean, I don't know what other movies were like up for. Okay, now I gotta Google it. Sorry, did this movie get any awards when it came out? I kind of need to know. Let's see. Did it get awards? It's gotta have gotten. Oh shit! Okay, it got a lot of awards. Okay, let me get on the IMDb page. I want to talk about this. Let's see. Okay, it was a nominee for best cinematography, won best sound. That's pretty good. And it won for best effects, sound effects. I feel like it should have won for more than just sound. I mean, the sound was good, the music was good. I'm glad it got best makeup. The makeup in here was pretty cool. Definitely, needed it for visual effects. I will say okay, so it did end up winning a bunch of awards, as it should. What was I going to say? And the Kids' Choice Awards. Sweet. I kind of forget those exist sometimes. Shoot, what was I going to say? Oh, yeah, the effects and stuff, because there's a lot of them. You know what? For, like, 1991 or 92 or whatever, that's probably as good as it was gonna get, and for the time, it's, like, still impressive. Like, obviously, it doesn't hold up today. There's some that are, like, kind of laughable here. But, like, for what they were working with, it was kind of like what I was saying for Jurassic Park, still looks good and stuff. Because, I mean, that's a lot to have a character that, is, like, normally, like, played by a human person, and then all of a sudden has to be, like, CGI metal. And the metal is so fascinating to watch. And, okay, I need to just talk about the T-1000 at this point. Oh. I'm getting all of the Discord things. Okay, I think I can get back to this. I have a friend that's wanting to lend me one of the DK games, and I have to remind him that I don't own a Switch 2, so I literally can't play the game. Okay, what was I saying? T-1000 effects. Yeah. The T-1000, because it's like played by a human person, but then shifts to being metal, and it's so interesting when he'll get like shot or he's like a blob of metal. And it's like the way he forms, where he'll go from like blob to like 3D model of smooth of like metal or whatever, and then literally becomes more and more detailed with all those like lines added in and more like three-dimensional, and then just bam, becoming human again and stuff. And that's always so cool to watch. Like, for some reason, out of everything, I was thinking about, I think because it's like a tense scene in a tense environment, when the characters are in the mental institution, when like Sarah's trying to escape and the Terminator show up, which is one of like the coolest parts of the movie. I will be talking about like individual scenes. I just want to kind of go over the characters first. And the T-1000 is there and is behind the metal fence or whatever. It's kind of funny when he looks through the fence. He kind of looks like a dog that's just kind of stuck behind there with its like nose against the gate, and then he just walks through it like it's freaking nothing. And the psychologist guy drops his cigarette or whatever because he's probably thinking like, holy shit, this dude just walked through a fence or whatever. Even though the T-1000 does way cooler stuff throughout the movie, there's just something about that. And I think you like already know he's metal by the time that happens. I don't think that's like the metal reveal. No, you get the metal reveal early on, actually. It's the scene in the mall when he gets shot and then his body kind of turns into metal, and it's like, what the heck is this guy? And I do find it cool that like he looks like a guy, and then whenever he like turns into metal, you think like, what the hell is this thing, But yeah, cool character, cool villain and stuff. Like, he already blends in like way more as a human than like the T-800, even like in this movie too, where he'll go up and talk to people, and even though there isn't really like a ton of emotion in his voice, he's not like completely monotone, and he can sound like not robotic with like the way he's asking people questions or whatever, where you think like, yeah, that's like a human person or something. I always find that interesting with like robot characters and stuff, of like how the ones that like look human, of like how well can they like pass as a person. I know that's like the whole thing with like the Turing test, whatever. Or wait, no, I think that one's just to determine like sentience and stuff. But yeah, like there's a part in the mall where he's like going around with the photo and he's like asking people where John is, or like he meets his foster parents and they're like, who are you, why are you here? And he's like, oh, I just need to talk to him or whatever, when is he gonna, he just, you know, sound like a normal person. You wouldn't think like, yeah, this guy's like a robot here to kill this kid or whatever, until, you know, he starts being violent. But I do like the whole thing at the beginning where you don't know like which character is the Terminator that's there to kill John, because even with the opening narration it says there's like a protector sent to protect John, but the narration doesn't say, hey, it's just a second Terminator, so you just assume it's a human person, especially because we see the T-800 first, where he's got like the leather jacket and the glasses and the whole Bad to the Bone song literally playing in the background, where it's like a very similar intro to like the first movie and stuff, with the Terminator there. And you know, it's a Terminator played by Arnold again, so you just kind of assume like, okay, this one's gonna be the one that's like trying to kill John or whatever. And then the second one shows up and it's just this guy that, you know, ends up with the policeman outfit or whatever. You know, that was something that surprised me, because with his whole ability of like physical touch and being able to like mimic people's forms and voices, I would have just assumed he would have just like shown up like as like just looking like metal and then kind of imprinting in a sense on like the first person he sees, but instead he already has like a human face. It looks like a human person. I think literally the only thing he copies, or I think even steals, is just the police clothes, which I wasn't even sure if those were like stolen anyway, because every time he reforms from the metal, he's just in that outfit like as that guy, which I thought was kind of funny, because you think for someone that's like supposed to be an emotionless robot or whatever the heck he is at this point, I don't know if I can call someone that's like literally like liquid metal, like not even like a physical robot, like a robot, but whatever. You'd think because you can like basically shapeshift that you'd want to like change your face so that the people who are running away from you can't recognize you, but no, he just, I know it's like for simplicity's sake of this being a movie and we need to recognize which one is like the T-1000 or whatever, but I find that funny that this robot that can like literally shapeshift into anyone that's not like child-sized or a pack of cigarettes or whatever, as John puts it, is choosing like the same face every time. I mean, he does change into like a couple of characters and like still mimics their voices. I actually think the Terminators being able to mimic people's voices is really cool, actually. Like I like the part when John finds out what happened to his foster parents and the mom is talking and the T-800 is also talking, but they're pretending to be John and the mom or whatever, and he goes like, yeah, your parents are dead, you know, like John, you know, doesn't really like them but still feels bad for them and doesn't want them to get killed and stuff. And then the dad gets like literally like a sword through his mouth, basically. Like the dude was not replaced yet at that point and didn't know his wife was dead. I felt bad for him. But yeah, what is the dude's name? Go back to the other page. Robert Patrick, yeah. The only thing I think I've seen him in besides this movie is Peacemaker, but he's like real old at that point, and looks a lot different. But here he's like super young. Everyone's actually like pretty young, except maybe like Arnold. I actually don't know how old he is in this movie. But yeah, Robert Patrick does a good job in that. You know, like I think I've mentioned it before with other reviews. It's probably hard to play robot characters where it's either like you don't blink much or you just have to walk in a certain way. Not do you have to be like robotic as if you're like literally made of metal or whatever. It's more of just the fact that the characters, the like cyborg characters and stuff, like they look human, but it's just always like something about their movements or their facial expressions doesn't change, or the way they like turn. It's all about like body language and stuff, which I always find interesting. That gives a way of like, okay, this person might be like a robot or just like a non-human, you know what I mean? But I notice with this guy, it's like what kind of makes him creepy, even when he's not going around like killing people or literally like turning his body into metal or whatever, besides the fact that I don't think he really blinks much. Actually, a lot of the characters are pretty good with that. Like there's this guy, I think his name's Miles, who's like the guy that invents the microchip that like basically screws over the world. And I remember when he dies, he doesn't really like blink or anything in that scene. He keeps his eyes like fully open but is still like kind of breathing funny because he's like dying or whatever. That's actually kind of creepy. I always find that creepy in movies when characters like die with their eyes open. In fact, that they just stay open in that whole shot as he's like sort of dying but not completely was kind of scary and a little impressive. But anyway, Robert Patrick, he doesn't really like blink much as this character from what I remember, especially the close-ups. He like has a lot of times in this movie where he kind of just stares down the camera. It's almost funny, like he has to move his head in a position where he'll like move his head down a bit and then kind of look at the camera or whatever, and it's kind of cool, but it's kind of a bit intimidating and stuff. Or it's like whenever he runs, he like, because sometimes he just walks slowly towards the characters, and sometimes he full on sprints, but he's like full on moving his arms in like this very exaggerated way where I'm like, people probably do run like that. Like he is probably running at like top speed or whatever, but there's something about it that's like kind of funny to me. And then eventually he gets some cool sunglasses. It's kind of funny, like he's the one that ends up destroying the T-800's cool sunglasses, but then he ends up getting his own sunglasses, and then wears those for like the rest of the movie and stuff, and that's pretty cool. And he also has a scene kind of like the T-800 in the first movie where, you know, they get to the robot factory and he stares at the machines there, and you don't really know what he's thinking about, but it's kind of in a way like, oh, look how far we've come. But there's this one part I remember when the characters are in the mall and the T-1000 passes by this mannequin that's, I think, entirely either made out of metal or it's just like colored silver, and he kind of like gives it this look as he walks past it, and it reminded me of the first movie. But anyway, the part where he dies is kind of interesting, where I mean, like I said, he's like a bit more human, at least compared to like the T-800 in the first movie, not with the one in this movie though. With like the way he talks to people and stuff, like he passes a bit more easily as a person, but then, you know, he also turns into a metal blob sometimes, and it's just like, oh shit. But when he dies is interesting, where he like falls into the lava after he does all those poses where he has his hands up when he gets shot. Those always kind of were funny to me for some reason. He gets kind of stunned, almost like a video game character or something. But anyway, he falls in the lava, and his death is kind of freaky. There was something about it that made me think of like Judge Doom melting from the goop or whatever in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Man, I gotta watch that movie again. Where it's like a slow death where you're like melted and you turn to weird. Or no, wait, I'm thinking about the part when he gets run over with the road roller thingy. Different thing. Anyway, no, when the T-1000 dies in this one, he turns into metal again. And his body literally like tries to shapeshift into the human characters from earlier, like the other cop or whatever, or like the night guard or something at the mental institution and John's mom, but he doesn't like completely turn into them. And then he turns into himself, and then he turns into metal, and he gets kind of freaky where he forms like multiple heads and stuff, and then when he finally dies, it's probably one of the worst effects in the movie, where he's himself again but metal, and then his face, like the metal spreads into different directions until it's like nothing. I think because it's like flat and stuff, it like looks super weird. But it was the part where he gains like multiple heads, like his metal body as he's dying is like can't even properly form into like recognizable people anymore. It's just forming into like vaguely human shapes and stuff. It was like a little creepy, not like scary, but it's just kind of like, oh, that's a weird death, but like it makes sense because he's like this liquid metal robot thing. I find it interesting too with the whole thing of like he has the limitations of like he can't turn into like objects or complex machines or things that aren't the same size as him, so he can only turn into like human adults basically, even though he can like turn into like, he can go back to being like a metal blob, and in that form he can move around kind of just however. And I thought like, why do you just keep turning into, I mean, I know he can only turn like humans, but I'm like, can you turn into like I don't think a human size like animal would work or whatever. I'm trying to think of like animals that are human size would be like faster or something. I feel like turning into a human would be kind of inconvenient actually. But I thought like, why doesn't he just mostly move around as like metal more, or like metal blob? I feel like metal blob would be easier to move around as and stuff than like human shaped person, but that's just me. But it was kind of, I guess, helpful for him that like he stays in the police officer costume the whole time. Like my mom said something of like, oh, he's just really attached to being dressed as a police officer, I guess. But no, it's because he's able to get into like freaking anywhere, I guess, dressed as a police officer. They don't even ask him for like identification. They let him into the like the mental institution and pretty much everywhere. And then at the end it's convenient for him when he shows up because like the cops were already called anyway. And then meanwhile Sarah and the other two were being like hunted down by like every police officer in LA and whatever. But yeah, the Terminators in this are cool. The characters are cool. This is getting a bit long, so I'll just go to the scenes that I thought were interesting. I like that it doesn't even take that long for the action to start. Like, we get sort of introduced to John, and you don't know which Terminator's good and which one's evil until you get to the confrontation at the mall. The whole mall thing was pretty cool. Where John is just playing the games and he gets approached by these strangers on either side and they both pull out a gun, and at first you think the Terminator's like going to kill him, and then the T-800, and then he says the get down and shoots the one dressed as a police officer, and then you see the weird metal thing and you're like, oh, Arnold's playing like one of the good guys this time. And then, takes on that like protector role and stuff. And then they have the chase with like the motorcycle versus the giant truck. I wonder if all of these movies that take place in like the present day or whatever, have someone getting chased around by a giant truck. There is kind of like some callbacks or like repeating things of like from the first movie, but it's actually not too bad. They try to keep it to a minimum, which I appreciate, because sometimes when there's like a really successful movie and then they make a sequel and they're like, what if we did some of the same things again that everyone liked, but then it usually isn't as cool. But that whole chase scene between like the giant ass truck and then John's little like motorcycle thing was cool. I felt bad for the stunt people. I mean, in the whole movie, I always feel bad for stunt people, but especially like in this scene where the characters are like falling off of like trucks and having to ride like motorcycles and things. But it's pretty cool. What else? The whole part with the mental institution, I think because of the lighting too, because it like takes place at night. I think that gets rid of some of the tension in this movie, though, the fact that it's like multiple days that are happening. Because like with the first movie, it's like they're going to these kind of shady locations and it's always nighttime, and it's like you have to survive the night kind of a vibe. But then with this one, it's like the first part when they like finally get the Terminators get to John happens like in broad daylight and everything inside of a shopping mall, but it's still kind of cool anyway. And then you have those like car chases and stuff, which I feel like wouldn't have been as cool at nighttime, honestly. Like you can't really see anything, but then when they're in the mental institution at night, which is already kind of a creepy place, you know, I feel like it fits. So the rescuing Sarah part was cool. And I completely forgot to mention earlier that they tracked down the guy, I mentioned his name's Miles, that like invents the microchip. And there's the whole thing of like fate is not written or whatever, where it's like they're changing history as things are happening. But we know because of the sequels exist that like somehow something's gonna go wrong. Like they already have the arm from the previous Terminator, and they're like, wow, we have access to technology we wouldn't even dream of. And then I find it interesting, and I completely forgot about the scene where Sarah breaks into this guy's house and tries to kill him and thinking it would like fix everything, but then she can't bring herself to do it, and then John has to go over there and kind of calm her down. And then from that point the two of them kind of grow a bit closer throughout the rest of the movie. And instead, I like that they actually tell the guy, like, hey, this is how you're going to be responsible for the deaths of, like, 300 billion people. And he's like, oh, shit, I need to help you guys prevent that. So then they go to try to prevent that in the computer place or whatever, and they try to blow it up, and they blow it up, and I don't know if that fixes everything, because like they blow it up, but that whole scene's pretty cool. And then the confrontation in the factory, and then, you know, they have to destroy everything, they end up losing their robot buddy, but you know, there's like a sequel to this, so I get that's the one thing that's like a little annoying, where they have it where it's like, okay, you know, we wrapped up everything with like the first movie where it's like Reese is dead and the T-800 is dead and no one can use the time machine again, so it's like, okay, that means Sarah's safe forever or whatever. But then the second one, it's like, oh, just kidding, we sent another 2 Terminators at like the same time or whatever, and now they're gonna kill John as like a kid or something. And then at the end of this movie, it's like they destroy all the tech, but like, you know, like 10 years later is like a third movie. I mean, I guess they can't completely stop the future from happening, or else it would like really fuck up the timeline, because that's the only way like Sarah's able to like prep for anything. And I don't know what the hell happens to John's existence if Reese doesn't get sent back to the past. And I don't know if they could even probably make a timeline where like the Terminators don't exist at all. I mean, they try to. The characters, you know, that's kind of the sad thing, where like even though they're like learning things from like the bad future, I guess, of like how to prevent it, they're still, and they're going through all this stuff, they're still not able to prevent it or anything. I mean, if anything, it does get Sarah ready, and then she's able to like raise John, and then I guess eventually the humans do win, but only by sending people back in time. It's confusing. I don't know if anybody ever wins at this point. That's why I gotta watch the rest of these. But yeah, I'm gonna try to find Genesis. I need to see where any of these movies are, actually, to see if I can even watch them at all. But I want to find the one with Matt Smith, but before I do, I don't know if I'll watch the third one. Hold on, I can tell you. Let me just look these up really quick. I need to know like the basic plots of like, wait, I just googled Terminators. That's not helping me right now. Wait, there's gonna be a 7th one of these? Is that real, or is this AI bullshit? Terminator 7 War of Extinction. Damn. I don't know if this is real. Let me see here. You gotta tell me about the films. Because there's 3... and Salvation, and then Genesis or whatever. That one's from 2015. Damn. Let me see. Hold on. I can tell you exactly if I'm interested. So 3. Terminator sent back in time to John's location. Oh, okay. Apparently James Cameron had nothing to do with the third movie. That kind of worries me. They have another Terminator with metal, so that's cool. Okay, I mean, that one takes place in like the 2000s or the 90s or whatever, so not too bad. Arnold gets to be there again. I don't know if he's a Terminator there to kill everybody or not. Sounds like Sarah's not in that one. Okay, so 3's a maybe for me. Salvation's the only one that doesn't have Arnold, but apparently Christian Bale is there. Okay, that one focuses on like the war. Okay, this one basically sounds like a war movie where it takes place in like the future. Yeah, I'm not interested in this. Where it's just like the war continues. I don't care. So we're skipping Salvation. 3, maybe I'll watch it. I don't know. And then the Genesis one. Okay, apparently that one isn't even connected to the previous movies. It's like a reimagining of the first movie. Where the timeline's been altered and now Sarah's being protected by a Terminator. And I don't know. Maybe. Okay, so from what I can say, maybe I'll watch the 3rd movie and maybe I'll watch Genesis. I don't care about Salvation or Dark Fate. So you may get one or more Terminator videos from me. But the fact that James Cameron wasn't involved with the 3rd, I have to look on the gotta look on Letterboxd. Let me just pause real quick. Okay, yeah, it sounds like the sequels aren't pretty good. Actually, some people seem to like Dark Fate. So you know what? I'm gonna watch the trailers. I don't know if I'll keep watching these. I mean, it sounds like the best it gets is like with this movie pretty much. And I was happy with the first 2 movies. And this one was so good. I almost don't even need the others. It's more of like curiosity, if anything. So I'm gonna put it on like a maybe. If you hear nothing from me about the rest of the series, it means I either didn't watch it or I watched it and hated it or didn't have any thoughts on it. So we'll just put it on pause for now. Or it might be that you just get another sequel video like tomorrow or something. But I got other movies I gotta watch. I gotta get back in Jurassic Park. I'm gonna see Wicked. I decided I want to watch Guardians of the Galaxy 2, so hopefully I'll get all those out before this one comes out. Yeah. Alright, but yeah, anyway, this movie's peak. I'm fine if the series ended here. If the sequels are truly terrible, maybe I'll just pretend it ends with this movie. But yeah, this was really good. I kind of want to own it on DVD. It was like that good, and I feel a little bad that I've only seen it twice. I feel like this could be a movie I could watch like every couple years. It's just really fun, honestly. It's just like a fun big like 80s action movie, even though it's from like 1991. That's always the weird thing though, that like the beginning of a decade, it's like the decade doesn't have its own like identity yet, so it still kind of carries over from the previous. Like everyone still dresses like it's the 80s in this movie. It's just they don't have the big poofy hair from the first movie or anything, and they even have like arcades and cool malls and stuff. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna go. Bye.